everyone. Welcome to the Hoopsters League of Action Heroes. We are an exclusive website for children, parents, and teachers, and education and new and innovative tools of teaching is one of our favorite areas of discussion. And today we have with us Deepa, who is an international storyteller and also the founder of Story Arts India, Story Arts Foundation. I apologize. And she's here to talk to us about how storytelling can be used as a powerful teaching tool, not just for teachers, but also for parents. Hi, Deepa. Welcome. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Nupur. Happy to be here.
Our pleasure. Deepa, before we start and get into the actual subject of today, which is there is a story around everything, which is pretty much true. So before we get into that, I'd like to ask you, why did you agree to do this interview to begin with?
So the things that you just spoke about, Nupur, which is art, teaching, education, all of these, parenting. Yeah, I'm a mother of two teenage boys. I have been in the education field for over 20 years now. So, and I am a storyteller, so art-based education. Yeah, these are all of personal interest to me in my life. Of course, I'm professionally there, but personally, I'm driven by these. So I got to understand and get a glimpse of what is happening here, right? With Hoopsters, it resonated with me, and for me, that's very important. If I agree to be a part of anything, when it resonates with me, and I see that there's possibility for alignment or for discussion, either which ways, that's when I come on board. Yes.
Great. I'm glad that we align somewhere because we love arts, we love education. So I think it's the best of both worlds. Tell us, Deepa, how did you develop interest in the art of storytelling?
I think, Nopur, if I look at my life journey, which is more than 4 decades now, I think I've always been interested in storytelling in different forms, right? I've trained in Bharatnatyam, Indian classical dance, from when I was 6 or 7 years old. I was introduced to a major love for books because my father would take me to bookshops, to libraries all the time. And it was very common, like parents come back home from office with a sweet dabba or some bakery goods, which my father would get sometimes. It was also very common that he would come back with some books. So I grew up with this whole exposure to literature. He would tell me stories at night. Drama and dance drama, these were things that interested my mother very much. So I think I've had a very early exposure to these platforms. And I remember as a child never being terribly fond of TV. The only 2 times that I went near TV was before the cable came in. It was to watch films on Sundays. Doorbell would have this regional cinema, so I watched Assamese, Malayalam cinema, different languages. And after the cable came, I would watch UTV Luminaire, I guess, which had world cinema in it, and Discovery Channel and Nat Geo, right?
That's an interesting choice of channels.
Sorry?
That's an interesting choice of channels to watch as a kid.
Yeah, and otherwise, TV never interested me much. The occasional cartoon, blah blah, but otherwise, not really. I was more an outdoor person. So I think, in different ways, these have come in, or I have encountered stories constantly. It wasn't a surprise that I came to this line. Incidentally, I share this that I found my diary when I was 13 years old. And as a teenager, I've written in my diary, I want to tell stories to the world when I grow up. So maybe this whole urge, yeah, to share stories, to share narratives in different forms,
Right, that's very interesting. So you had this plan very early on in life.
I wouldn't say plan, but the desire.
Desire, yes. Right. Tell us, what is your, like you said that your father used to tell you stories and then you were, exposed to dance, drama and all these various platforms. What is your fondest memory of storytelling as a child?
It would be listening to my father. Would tell, I can't say stories because, literally one story he allowed for 3 years. And I I heard the same thing over and over. So he would tell, I think it is a story. It is listening to a story from him, which a lot of children from Tamil Nadu, a lot of adults today from Tamil Nadu would be familiar, which is the story of the monkey that lost its drum, you know.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
my bedtime favorites. And there's a refrain in that. I still remember my father lying down and singing that. Pona machan tirumbi vanda dum 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 dum. Pona machan tirumbi vanda dum 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 dum. Each time, the monkey would sing that line. Yeah. I think that would be a memory.
I think we all have our own versions of that story. We had something similar here, I think, because my grandmother was the one who told me stories. Thankfully, I didn't have to listen to one story. She had many. So, if you look at, for me personally, when my grandmother used to tell me stories, or she would, like ask me to read stories, I found that it really channeled my imagination very well. Of course, that's the beauty of storytelling. Tell us how you think storytelling shaped the way you think, and to a large extent, your personality.
Um, Definitely. Stories of all kinds have, if I look back, if I have to try and connect the dots, they've certainly had an impact in very many different ways. For example, if I think of Indian classical dance, right? That has given me ways to express with the whole of my body, ways to express with, gestures, ways to express with my eyes, navarasas. It just
Right.
comes automatically, the various tools for expressing emotions. So I would say that impacted ease of expression, the dance in particular. And literature, language and literature really help with verbal,
Mm-hmm.
the speech, the thought process. I do feel that now the way I articulate thoughts or my ideas comes from exposure to literature. And my father's been a big influence in anything to do with language, and he was a big fan of simplicity. In class 8, I don't know if others have gone through this phase. In class 8, I had this fancy to use very big words, lots of idioms, lots of metaphors. So my would be just dumped with all that. And my English teacher, she was so sweet. She knew that I'm just excited about the language, and very gently she tried to explain it to my father that, she's good, but just sort of. My father gave me the example of how some of the best writing that he's ever read is extremely simple. So I
Right.
think that influenced me. So with a master's in English literature,
Right.
I always say that backing helps me say things in the most simple yet unboring manner.
Okay.
Say that has influenced working with radio. I was with the All India Radio working part time for almost 5 years. So that was purely, it was nothing to do with my dance experience. You cannot dance on radio. So it was exactly my non-dance skills that had to develop there, which is just the voice. So there, working with a blind media, there was a lot of scope to purely structure and understand voice.
Hmm.
And that really, built my understanding of tonality, speech. I mean, we did everything. We did radio plays. We worked on documentaries. We did talks, and we would be really scared because we had to prepare and interview senior theater people, all of that. So
Right.
I did Alice in Wonderland as an audio storytelling for radio. So
Wow.
I worked on my voice. Then I used to write for the Hindu. I used
Mhm.
to write for the Hindu. I would write a column. So that was just rigorous training with writing. So yeah, I think each of these have contributed, in a way they have just come together and integrated and fallen in place. Teaching, yeah, what skill that gives you. It's a certain kind of public speaking. It's a certain kind of very conscious yet engaging communication. Teaching is about clear communication. You have to say what you're saying. You can't say something else. It's
Hmm.
responsible communication, right? Because there are 40 children out there sitting in the class who are hanging on your word.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's, each has contributed different aspects of storytelling.
Wonderful. And See, storytelling, as we understand, is a very cultural thing. You know, each culture has its own way of telling stories. It could be through, like you said, dance. It could be through just generational grandmothers telling stories to grandchildren, or it could be puppetry. There's so many different ways of storytelling. So, can you take us through a little bit about some interesting cultural forms that are, unique to different parts of the world of storytelling?
Right, right. Um, yeah, that's absolutely true. And even the opposite is true, that there's an undercurrent thread which is universal
Okay.
across um, any storytelling tradition across the world, right? And I find two things, as an answer to that, which has helped me get perspective on this. One, I lived in almost 10 states across the country for various reasons. My father was not in the army, but for various reasons, I traveled much. I lived across different states. So by the time I was 30, I'd lived in almost 10 states in India, right?
Right.
So that itself gives you a cultural perspective,
Okay.
uh, the multiplicity, the differences across places, and that core similarity
Hmm.
which is there across spaces. Why I'm mentioning this backstory is that because I think that gave me a comfort in immediately tuning into, okay, what is different in this place that I'm going to, and what is that thread that of mine that will stay. For example, in 2016, I was in Iran, yeah, and, even from the not even from in the plane itself. I mean, I've never seen the sight in any of my travels across the world. In the plane, there were people singing and dancing. So
Oh,
literally, the
lovely.
stewardess had to say, "Excuse me, please sit down." There were people dancing. The person who came to pick me up, he was playing music in the car. Outside on the streets, there's music. So I knew that music is such a key element for the people here. And thankfully, I tell stories with music and dance. So that was a very quick thread to pick on to when I was narrating in Iran. Another thread is their love for Bollywood. You know,
Ah, lovely.
Iranian people are just crazy about Bollywood. So on the road, when they would see me walking in my sari, they would just randomly stop me. Jaan jab tak hai jaan jaane jao. Yeah, so you find an entry point, where
Right.
you catch what is the pulse, and then you offer yourself to.
Right.
So this was Iran, and then in Scotland, I remember one of my favorite projects was with a Scottish storyteller, Marianne Kenny, who's also a very dear friend. And the theme of the storytelling was India, Scotland, and old friendship. As they say, an old friendship in Scottish. So we were very excited because we had an old friendship, and we are from India and Scotland, and we were performing at the National Library of Scotland in Edinburgh. So, given my academic background and given that she has a background in literature and music, what we did, we researched, and I found out from my music teacher that Robert Burns, who's a national bard of Scotland, a very celebrated poet, they much loved, and Rabindranath Tagore from India, again,
Right.
very well known, doesn't need an introduction. They both were very good friends.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So we took that thread and then we wove our entire performance around that, where Marianne had a story of Robert Burns's life, and then I narrated the Kabuli Wala in a musical style. We began with since I dance, I started with a Robindra Sangeet song for which I performed a dance. Then we moved on to, our own friendship and the connections from there. So it was just finding, what's the thread, what's it that's going to bring the connect for that particular audience.
Right.
And the more you do it, the more you get a sense of these things. Like that
Right.
very literary academic audience, right?
Mhm.
We kept moving from music. Oh yeah, we sang this song which is Auld Lang Syne, which a lot of Scottish people will know. I mean, everyone in Scotland will know. And Rabindranath Tagore has transcreated it in Bengali.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
so I sang the Bengali song and Marianne played it on the flute, the Auld Lang Syne. It was, it just catered to the sensibilities there. So was there an Indianness in what I was doing? Yes. Was there a university, and did it create a connect for the people of Scotland? Yes. Yeah. I think these are ways, and this, I want to talk about a complete extreme opposite. You know, this was literally researched. There was one in South Africa where the project was with rural municipality schools.
Mhm.
Every day we were covering three schools. You know, we would have these vans, three vans, the entire university team. We would go there, get into the school, tell stories. Many times my stories had to be translated into Swahili or Zulu or whatever is the local language. In one school, they brought in these really tiny pre-primary kids. And they said, we want them to hear an Indian story. And I was like, these children won't even follow English, how do I? But the school was very keen. And it was afternoon. And literally, I could see some of the tiny tots. They were in the front row like that. So I really thought hard and I decided, okay, I will tell the monkey and the cat seller. And why did I think of this? Because when I was performing in Greece, there was a storyteller who narrated Monkey and the Capsular in Greek.
Okay.
And it was not Greek to me.
Uh-huh.
Because of the actions, I immediately turned to my Greek friend who also spoke English and I said, isn't he telling the story of the monkey and the capsular? And she said, yeah. So I remembered that, I said, I think that will work. So I quickly learned the Swahili words I pick up spoken forms of any language very fast. Okay. So I quickly asked them, what's the word for monkey? What's the word for cap? What's the word for tree? All the keywords in my story. And I told the story to the children. It was full action. It was this cap and imitating the throwing of the man getting angry. They just had 15 minutes of mad fun. Even if they didn't get the exact story framework, they connected, right? Yeah. So I would say that cultures across have a love for narrative. All of us across the world have a love for narrative, but what kind of narratives would change not only from country to country, it would change even like within the context, right? So a rural pre-primary school, the story that would work there would be very different from what would work at the National Library or the Opera House in Graz, in Austria, where we had the mayor and the financial district heads sitting there. So it's getting a sense of the pulse, doing your homework, doing some research, and then going with absolute intuition, spontaneity as much. Right.
And do you think that Indian storytelling stands out in some way? If so, how?
See, I've certainly seen I've been to 9 countries, okay, and I've worked with people from over 100 countries. I'll tell you how, because I do lecture demonstrations on oral traditions of India at the English and Foreign Languages University, which is my alma mater, which is in Hyderabad. And I've been doing, I think, around 8 batches across the last 3 years. And in each batch, there are about 100 people who come from over 80 to 100 countries across the world. These are international professionals. It could be a scientist, a lawyer, anthropologist, teachers, who come to India, spend 3 months to learn English. Okay. So with this batch of almost 800 people from across the world, and with the travels across the 8 or 9 countries, both the places, what I have eventually come to understand, right, is more often than not, they have heard of stories from India. Okay, either the Panchatantra, that's one of the most common, or Ramayana or Mahabharata. And I've seen performances in Singapore. I remember there was a French storyteller, a Norwegian storyteller from France performing in Singapore, and I went there very excited. Oh, this is my first international performance that I'm going to see, and he narrated Panchatantra, and the scorpion. Yeah, it was a 45-minute performance of the Panchatantra story, Frog and the Scorpion. So just in terms of familiarity, to start with, I certainly find that there is familiarity. There are a lot of storytellers from across the world who reach out to Indian narratives, Indian epics, Katha Sarit Sagar, Jataka Tales, yeah, the various Ramayana, Mahabharata, right? Of course, they're extremely popular. I do find that there is a keen interest. And personally, I have enjoyed Indian narratives. And when I started, I remember a lot of people around me were doing Western stories, and I literally had to justify, even in India, oh, you don't tell Cinderella, you don't tell Snow White. No, why are you telling, Indian stories? Why are you telling Tenali Rama? But that was precisely my point. That as a person teaching English, with my primary focus on teaching in the context of the Indian reality, which is we are not native speakers of English.
Right.
The teacher is also struggling with her English. The students are also struggling with their English. So, as a storyteller, educator, also, not only as an artist, I really believe that this is the connection space where you tell our stories, but you tell them in English, but you keep them multilingual. So, in the middle of a Tenali Rama story, I will say, and Tenali Rama's wife said, Ayo, entukandi, why? You know, and then go back to English. How these kind of possibilities exist.
Right.
I'm just diverting a little to language, but yeah, Indian narratives certainly have held a universal appeal, and they have these layerings, right? They have layers, they have interconnectedness, one story inside another story, this story leads to that one. So the complexity, the rich layering, these certainly appeal to people a lot. And I think even the non-simplicity of characters, uh,
Right.
yeah, which is quite realistic, right? I mean, nobody
Yeah.
is an absolutely good person, bad person, right? So our stories have mixed characters also.
Right. Right. So true. I mean, it's an interesting perspective to have on Indian stories. And, it's interesting that you speak about, how many people you've worked with from all over the world and the number of performances you've done. But where was your starting point? When did you decide, what, I'm going to do this as a career?
Yeah. Okay, that's a story I shared in the recent past. It's one of those where I've been one of those people who, I as I when you remember when you said you had a plan, and I said I didn't have a plan, I just had a dream. So most of my things are like that. I don't have plans. I just have this desire, and it'll just lie like that until something comes or somebody comes and slaps it out. That's how it was with storytelling. I was doing it for a long time, informally, and then with the radio, I was doing it. I was telling stories in the classrooms that I taught, but it was only in 2008.
Hmm.
In 2008, I had a medical condition. A medical condition because of which my cholesterol count shot up like crazily. It's supposed to be less than 200, I think. Mine was around 656.
Wow. Hmm.
And then I was taking 80 tablets of steroids every day. So I would joke like this is my tiffin, like subah, like I would be like just having this platefuls of steroids. It
Hmm.
really wasn't funny when I was probably 32 or something that time. Yeah, two small children. And this went on for 4 months, January to April. Why do I remember this? Is because by the time the summer came, and I had hoped to be fine, and I was hardly better. I was quite done with all the side effects of the steroids, and living with that stress of yeah, one possible side effect was that you could get a heart attack. So all of that, and so I just decided in the month of May that listen, let me just do something that I really love. Okay, because anyway, I'm having to bear with this whole.
Hmm.
So I was in a small town in Maharashtra. I put up posters in the town. The nice part about small towns is you know everybody, right from the cobbler to the goldsmith to the market, the grocery store. You know everybody in person. Everybody
Right.
knows you in person. So everyone agreed to put my little poster, which said storytelling and dance summer camp. So I just literally, made this poster on the computer with a PPT, the slides, right, on a PPT, took a printout, put it out, called up a school and asked if I can hire her hall for 3 weeks. And I decided, okay, if I get 15 students, I'm going to go and do this camp. And after 28, I had to say, sorry, no more registrations, registrations closed. So I did a 3 weeks camp with these children, Monday to Friday. It was 15 days in all. At the end of it, I invited the parents and we got the children to dance and whatever they wanted to, whatever they'd done in the camp, dance or tell stories or do craft work. My next follow-up checkup, Nupur, the doctor said, "Oh, you're fine. We have to stop your steroids." And I said, "But you said that we have to taper them, right? From 80 tablets to 60 tablets to 40 tablets." And he said, "Yeah, but you're fine. I can't medicate you." Um, so I know that any logical thinking science person is going to tell me, "Where's the proof?" But I don't care. For me, it's proof. So I've just decided from then that, you know what, come what may, don't give this up because this is really giving you energy. This is really healing you. So that was my first paid project for
Right.
storytelling. And then it was drip. It was really drip, 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 drip. It was very, very tiny, small steps that slowly took shape. And yeah, I don't think I particularly dreamt that this is the shape it will take, but yes, I'm glad.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. I think at the end of the day, just being happy is what heals you, right? I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I was going through your website of Story Arts Foundation, and one thing that I found is that you use storytelling a lot in the classroom. Okay, and you yourself are a national award winning teacher, educator, so I'm sure that you have really thought this through. So tell us why teachers need to understand the art of storytelling, or at least implement it in some way or the other, to make subjects or make the classroom more interesting for children.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, true. So, in fact, one of the awards was for best e-content for videos that I made for teacher training. That is, the B.Ed and M.Ed teacher trainees for them. It's called Storytelling and its Pedagogical Possibilities in English Language Teaching. So that's the one that was made for UGC,
Hmm.
and it won the National Award for Best E-Content from Consortium for Education Communication, because it was a project that, I was like, no, I'm not just presenting it. This is storytelling. We have to show it to the teachers. So I said, let's get children, let's get two cameras, watch the children, watch me, it to the teachers, because unless you really see it, it's a little hard to get it. The point of storytelling is an end there. One, two. A lot of us think of storytelling as something that is very nice for the. So the other national award grant, it was a research grant I got, LTREP India Award from British Council. That was for my project, which was on teachers. So the whole point was that it's not just the child that benefits when the teacher tells stories. This tool is something that benefits the teacher.
Okay.
As a person who is in the education field, she grows, whether it is her ability to use the whole of her body, right? Because when you are working with children, especially if you're going to say, and I'm giving examples of especially very small children, you could say, and he went searching, you know just that very small thing, just adding that and looking like that is suddenly going to interest the child and get them excited about the story itself. So helping teachers open up and realize that they have this fantastic tool right there, which is themselves. You have yourself. You have so much of you that you can use, and you don't have to turn upside down and do circus, but in very small ways. If you're going to say come, and if you're going to say come, come, right? Just that gesture can make such a difference.
Right.
And how can you use those things? And he turned, just that. So two aspects, one, showing the teacher that actually becoming a storyteller, yeah, using her body to communicate. One of my favorite examples is the word stop, right? So let's say I say stop, yeah. I add my body. I say, stop. Just stop. I add an expression, stop. Right? How much more effective it is rather than saying, stop.
Right. Right.
So just growing this ability of the teacher. So literally, if a word stop can make a child's attention, being brought there by use of these things, imagine if your entire
Right.
engagement is going to draw the child. Um, my project, which was research based, which was taking the diaries of teachers. They had to write after telling stories. They had to write what they felt like. And Nupur, I'll never forget that the English teacher in a slum school, she came back the next day and she said, Madam, they are listening to me for the first time in the English class. And the children would have, but see what it made her feel.
Right.
They are listening to me, madam. And the next thing that happened was she said, Madam, they are asking me again for the story,
Oh, so sweet.
that they wanted to hear. The next thing is that, Madam, even without my telling, they want to tell the story to each other. This is a very a natural outcome. They hear the story, and if it's narrated in an engaging style, they're going to want to share it. Here you have your children getting interested in your content and getting interested in revising it, right? By telling someone else, it's revision.
Right.
And it's such a fun revision. So these are like very, to me, very obvious aspects of storytelling that why can't all of us leverage, right? In
Right.
whatever context we are, wherever we are. Another one again is where, she said, I never realized, I'm just giving examples of different teachers. I never realized that, in that story, we spoke about the girl climbing the mountain. So, it was like this, she went up the mountain. And the teacher said, I never thought I could show climb like that. It's so sad, but we have been a lot of people have been inhibited from using their body. So she was struggling to teach the word climb. She's struggling with vocabulary. Just the use of an action would have helped. Or the context, the moment it's a mountain and she's below, the story context is helping you understand the word.
Right.
Or the expression like, she was terrified. So even if they don't know terrified, they will guess what terrified might mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
So grammar, vocabulary, and of course the four skills of listening, speaking, reading, writing. I'm coming to specifically English language teaching because I do believe it works for everything, but my starting point has been with storytelling for English language teaching and how it benefits. So in each of these, I could really, this was just, I'm just touching the surface. But each of these, we could go deeply into
Right.
how can you, once you understand, how can you, in a semi-structured manner,
Right.
work with a story and work with the transaction of storytelling, work with the magic that happens after you tell a story to bring about the development of listening, speaking, reading, writing skill, of vocabulary, of grammar. And apart from the language benefits, how can you bring in critical thinking? How can you bring the sensitivity, empathy in children? How can you grow their resilience? Because really, end of the day, Nupur, aren't these what we need, right?
Right. Of course. Of course.
To move forward. So stories can help teachers become very conscious, I would say, very conscious vehicles for this transaction.
Right. I think you already said it. I mean, if you're using storytelling, it doesn't have to be limited to language. It can sort of, make its way into other subjects. So if, let's say, a math teacher is watching, I think that's one of the hardest subjects. Most kids struggle with it. I was one of them. If we were to implement an art like storytelling into a subject which is so, it's very structured. Maths is a very structured subject. How would that work?
Right. I think this is also our understanding of mathematics. There's mathematics, if you know, doesn't fall under the Nobel Prize category. You don't have a Nobel Prize for mathematics subject. Yeah, you have the Field Maths Award, the Fields Award. So one of the mathematician who won the award, an Iranian woman, I'm forgetting her name. Yeah, so she loved literature, loved novels, loved books. As a child, that's all she did. And even her her research, it's mostly doodles.
Mm.
Okay, it's a lot of doodling that she did. Yeah. So I think that we generally haven't been introduced to mathematics with those kind of perspectives. This is a general statement. I'm not coming to storytelling. I'm just saying that I think there are those possibilities. And then coming to maths or science or any subject, um, yes, it is interesting to for a teacher to look for different tools, I would say, for creative and clear communication of the idea. Broadly, that's what I would say. I don't believe that you have to, telling the subject as it is boring. So tell stories. No, you could use art, you could use music, you could use dance, or you could just be very clever and clear in your communication.
Right.
Example, the Nobel laureate Richard Feynman, he was a rock star physicist, and he would say that he learned to think in metaphors from his father. So if his father had to tell him that the dinosaur, it was 300 meters high dinosaur, he would say, "Imagine, Richard, a dinosaur three times the size of our house." You know,
Right.
he gave him metaphors to think. I would say that that's what we are broadly looking for,
Mm.
find ways to reach the child, and storytelling can be one of the ways. Why I'm saying this? Because we have to be very careful, Nopur. There is this tendency that anything which is trending in education, okay, let's pick it up. Okay, now everybody tells stories to teach everything every time, right?
Mm. Mhm.
That's not, there's a danger in that also.
Right.
It's not going to work. You may not be able to do justice to the authenticity. Things like maths, things like science, there's something very authentic. You can't be wishy-washy,
Mm.
right? Unlike art space, like a poem. A poem can mean something to you, it can mean something to me, but one plus one is two.
Mm. Right.
Right? So we have to be very careful when we use stories. It's certainly inspiring to use them. I might sound like the opposite. No, I'm not saying not use stories. In fact, my graduation is in science. I studied nutrition and clinical dietetics. In 2007, when I first started my MPhil, which I discontinued because of this medical ailment. So that research was also on the language of science communication, right? So I am interested in this space, but because I have a background in science, I keep coming back to this, that when you are using stories or arts, please be very aware, to retain the authenticity, the exact intent, to be aware, like we say in science, a definition has to convey. If I define a cell, it must, or if I define photosynthesis, it must define photosynthesis, and the definition must ensure that it excludes any other definition,
Right.
you know so that's how precise we have to be.
Mm.
Having said that, an example I would say for a math teacher, this is one of my favorite stories, which is from it's a story from Rajasthan in India, right? It's a story of a young girl and her father, and they were people who worked on the farm, but sadly they didn't own the farm. There was a big zamindar who owned it, and they had been working for him, the little girl and her father, many, many, many years before the father's father, and before that, the father's father. They'd always been working for the land. The zamindar came, and once again he said, You have never been able to pay the money to finally own the land. It's high time you take a decision. Either you pay up or I marry your daughter. The farmer and his daughter both were very sad. The situation was already unfair, and the zamindar, the landowner, was only making it worse. And they were wondering what to do. You couldn't easily refuse the zamindar. And zamindar, in a sort of a mood for some fun, he said, all right, I am making an offer, okay? Tomorrow, I'll come with a little pouch which will have 2 stones in it, a black stone and a white stone. Now, your daughter has to pick up one of the stones. If she picks up the black stone from the pouch, then she will have to marry me and the land will continue to be mine. But if she picks up the white stone, then your daughter does not have to marry me and the land would belong to you. No choice, so they agreed to this. And the next day, the zamindar came. He came with a little pouch. The father was almost in tears. What was he doing? He wasn't even there to stand up for his daughter, to help resolve the situation. Everything was just going out of his hands and there was nothing to do. In that despair, as the father stood, the little girl looked at her father and something struck her. So she told the zamindar, can we please go beside the village well? And so they went beside the village well for this little event to happen. The zamindar took the pouch and very quickly he picked up 2 black stones and quickly put and sealed the pouch. The girl's heart sank. She didn't know what to do. Should she inform her father of what she had seen? Because her father was already in despair. He would just melt in further hopelessness. Should she point out to the zamindar? But all the village people were there. Everyone is so powerful, and would they listen to her words? So confused, she just kept quiet. And the zamindar held the pouch in front of her. Yes, pick a stone. And now we know that there were not 2 stones of different colors. There wasn't 1 black stone and 1 white stone. There were 2 black stones. Now what the girl did was, she put her hand inside. She pulled out the stone, still covered. And then she just pretended to trip and fall backwards and let the stone fall into the well. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. It slipped out of my hand. Oh, I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. But anyways, if we need to know the color of which stone I picked, we can look at the color of the stone that is remaining and then we'll know. And so in front of the villagers, the pouch was opened and they found a black stone, which meant that she has picked up the white stone. And that is how the clever girl saved her life and her father's, right? So on the face of it, Nupur, it's a very simple story, but it goes back to a basic concept of mathematics, which is probability. So the chances of the other stone, being of certain color because of the number of stones, given that there were 2 stones, right? So if you take probability, 50% chance that this will be black, 50% chance that it will be white, right? So it's a very beautiful way to connect it to probability to start with, as I see. I think maths teachers might find many more things in this. But this is one thing that strikes me. It's a great way to connect it with social sciences, where you're talking about bonded labor and other social injustices. And I mentioned that the story is in Rajasthan. So if we wish to, you can go into the topographical description of the story and connect it with geography of deserts, It's your choice.
Right.
How you can take a narrative framework and play around with it, but be careful.
Hmm.
You know, don't. I mean, this is not my advice. This is what I tell myself. That when you take a story to use it for science or for mathematics, Deepa, please know exactly what you are doing. Don't simply tell a story and just connect it with the concept in the class. Just connect it randomly with the curriculum. That's like a force fit. You're bringing a contrived connection. If it's not happening, then don't use the story. Yeah. Or be very clear that you're just telling a story, and now let's come to the subject, which is equally honest. Just be honest and clear about it. But pretend force fitting can be problematic.
Right. Right. And how do teachers practice this? Because everything takes practice to understand where to use it, where to refrain from using it. What are the best ways for teachers to understand how to use storytelling, or even, like you said, body language? You cannot be overly expressive either in a class. You can't always be like that. At
Yeah.
some point, you need to control your class or keep them in check. So, how do teachers practice this?
I would say, in fact, the answer is in your question. You use the word practice. Right? So that's pretty much it. You cannot get you cannot learn swimming without getting wet, without getting into the water. You can read 100 books about how to swim sitting on the shore. Yeah. But you finally have to get into the water, go like that and swallow a little and gasp for breath. Everything will happen. And you need to be prepared for that.
Right.
So the same with storytelling. Definitely, there's a lot of learning in the teaching, in the using in the classroom, in the practice. So I would really highly value that start to do it, and then you get the ideas. And picking on one other thing which you said, moving so much, even storytelling is not moving so much.
Right.
I mean, if you just think of the story I narrated, I wouldn't think I was moving like too much.
No, what I meant was you cannot be overly expressive with your body language sometimes in class, because I don't know, your class is making, there's a din in the class, so you have to be strict. So even when you're trying, like we had a maths teacher, okay, who was, like I said, very, very expressive. Okay, so if he's teaching Venn diagrams, he's like, set A, set B. He was very like that, and we loved him, but he knew exactly when he needs to pull it down and say, listen, enough is enough.
Right.
He knew that difference.
Right. Yeah. So, and yeah, as you're saying both, like I tell teachers, you don't have to say, once upon a time, there was a thirsty crow. I mean, I'm just exaggerating. I'm sorry, teachers. I don't say that you do that. I am, everything I speak is notes to myself, okay? So we can just play around and see what will work. And as you rightly pointed out, what's the context for it to work, right? And this is a tool. This is a real powerful tool with the teacher. Now that you're saying this, Nupur, in Kendra Vidyalaya, I've been contractual teacher in many Kendra Vidyalayas. And like any other school, they have this thing called substitution period,
Right.
where the teacher is absent
Yeah.
and you have to go to that class. And remember, as a student, how you hated it if you're just freaking out that the teacher is absent and then some other teacher walks in just to discipline you. So
Yeah.
I remember how annoying it was when that teacher walked in, and I was annoyed to walk in as a substitute teacher, and I would see the children, good afternoon, ma'am. And I wanted to tell them, I know what you're feeling, man. Yeah. So coming to what I would do with them, I did this substitution period 3 or 4 times, and I said, oh God, this is mutual sadness. We have to figure out some solution for this. So after that, the moment I enter a substitution class, I'll tell them, Kahani sunna hai? You want to listen to a story? Yes, ma'am. Whole class will shut. Then I'll say, okay, we have 40 minutes period, no? 20 minutes if you all keep quiet. Then 20 minutes, I'll tell you a story, okay? And then I'll do my work. And these people will manage themselves, because they want the story at the end. So after 20 minutes, ma'am, 20 minutes ho gaya, ma'am, 20 minutes up. Oh. Then I like to sit down and tell them a story. So yeah, like your maths teacher, it's I mean, I'm reminded of Rumi, who said, "What is poison? Excess is poison." Which means even love in excess can be poison. So even movements and expressions and stories in excess can be poison. So yes, teachers, we definitely have to use our discretion, moderation. Yeah, find your ways to moderate and to narrate your stories.
Right.
Yeah.
And moving from teachers to the other teachers in our lives, which are our parents, how can they use this tool? Because I feel like, at least in the newer generation, like if my peers have children and all of that, I feel like the amount of storytelling that I had with my mother is not the same with uh, the younger parents. I mean, there are so many visual mediums today. You can just play a video on or your iPad or YouTube, and the child is sorted, and there is enough storytelling for them to sit and watch.
Yeah.
Why should they invest time in actually telling stories to their children?
Right. So I'm sure you agree, Nupur, that when there's someone sitting there in front of you, eye to eye, yeah, and you're having a conversation, that cannot be replaced by the best of the best technologies, which says, congratulations, you've got your 10 points. That can never make up for that, exchange of eye contact, the little smile. So I would just want to remind ourselves that there is such an immense beauty and a need for this, even if your child believes there isn't, right? So let's not go by what our children seem to believe. Probably, when you say I'll tell you a story, for children who are not used to it initially, let's say they might roll their eyebrows and go like, what stories. But trust me, and I'm sure a lot of you agree also, is once you actually get around to telling the story, there is bound to be that connection. Because literally, I remember, in Bhubaneswar, there was a storytelling in a public park, and each of us, after our storytelling, we had to interact. We could interact with the audience for 10 minutes, and one person asked me, "Madam, what is a moral? What is a message that you have
Right.
at the end of the story?" And I said, "Sir, whatever it is for you, that's it for you. What it is for him, it's for him. What it's for her, what it's for her, that's it."
Hmm.
And then he said, "No, what is your aim before you come to stage?" I said, "My aim is that you and I put aside our laptops, our mobiles, our iPads, our tablets. We look at each other in the eye. We exchange love and laughter and togetherness.
Right.
It just so happens that I'm using stories for it. Whatever else you could use for this, so be it."
Right.
And that's something that parents can use stories for. Parents who say that, my child doesn't talk much to me, right? My child doesn't tell me what happens in the school or what happens with the friends. One of the things that, me and my educationalist friend parents, we have discussions and we realized, is why is it happening with our children, yeah, that they talk about these things? It's also because we do the same. When you are telling a story, even if it's not your personal story, even if it's not your life, but if you narrate a story to the child, you're basically telling the child, you know what? I value our conversation time. That's really what settles in the heart of the child. Whatever be the story, what settles
Hmm.
in the heart of the child is okay, mama or papa or, whoever is the person, this adult in my life likes to put aside her phone, put aside her office work, put aside her housework, his housework, whoever, and just sit with me and have a conversation with me. And that is bound to get reciprocated.
Hmm.
And this is what, I literally give parents, I tell them, take it like a 1 month challenge. And I will tell that to parents and teachers here also. Take it like a 1 month challenge. Tell your students or your children a 2 to 3 minute, really small, you don't have to look for long stories, every day. Tell a 2 or 3 minute story every day. And trust me, within a month, you will find that your child will start on their own, They might stop you in the middle of the story and they might say, that ma'am, no, and they'll tell you something about school. Or, Ashwin is my friend because, that pencil he and I share. They will start talking to you.
Right.
Right. So I would really, that's one thing I would really urge parents to really try, spend time sharing stories. You can tell fictional stories. You can pick up a book and read to the child. These are literally conversation starters,
Right.
But you can tell stories from your life. And
Right.
please, who might be thinking that my child will not understand, right? If you think like, I mean, if I tell something about office or about my workplace, like, child isn't going to understand. Why should I even bother telling that? That's exactly what your child is going to think. That my papa won't understand, stories about my friends or about my school. Why should I tell?
Right.
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 So this is what happens. Like I tell a lot of stories about, for example, I would probably tell my sons, today I had this interesting session and there was Nupur and we spoke about these things. So tomorrow the children are going to come back and say, oh, mama, we had this class and this is what happened in the geography class,
Yeah.
whatever.
It's a nice exchange. And, like you said, storytelling has one aspect where you're talking and the other one is listening. And there is one concept that you talk about, which is empathetic listening. What does storytelling do for parents or teachers and make them more empathetic towards their children?
Right, right. Yes, so this is one of my recent articles that I'd written, Nupur. It's a thread that I'm really fond of. This article was on the art of empathetic listening. This was for a teacher educator magazine called Mind Brain Plus Think Tank, where it reaches out to 2,000 educators across the world. And very interestingly, the April issue was on storytelling itself.
Wow. Okay.
And it was nice that the editors were open to my idea of wanting to focus on the teacher becoming the empathetic listener, right? So we all think of storytelling as building speaking skills. Children listen to stories, then they will become very good storytellers. They'll become very good storytellers, no doubt. But that's not the end, right? And that's not the end agenda for the teacher. As a teacher storyteller, as a parent storyteller, when I just narrate a story and end, I don't have to say anything. I don't have to say, so the moral of the story is. I can just tell the story and wait. It's very interesting what comes up. It's very interesting, the thought processes that come up from the children and what all it can open up, right?
Hmm.
And especially when you wait and wait patiently, there are children who do not, even adults, who are not articulate, who cannot process their thoughts so fast, who cannot say it out immediately. So by waiting, you are, supporting all kinds of expression.
Right.
And after a story, when you wait like that, we often find that slowly over a period of time, knowing that the teacher or knowing that the parent is waiting, children start opening up with
Hmm.
what they felt about the story or what they think about the story, right?
Right.
The two examples that are coming to my mind right now. One is a story that I would narrate of a girl who there is a demon, and the demon has this power that if he puts his hand on anybody's head, they would turn to ashes. And this girl, she knows to dance, and she goes and tricks the demon into dancing with her. Okay, and finally, the demon also puts his hand on his own head, and he turns to ashes.
Right.
And I've been doing this story like this for quite a few years. And when I was doing it, I think in Kala Ghoda, Mumbai, if I remember right, there was one girl who became very sad. And as usual, because I never gave any moral or I announced anything at the end of the story, I just finished the story and I always wait for the children. Okay, now what do you think? What are you feeling? Anything anybody wants to ask? Anything anybody wants to say? And when I say ask, I don't mean that I have the answer. Let's just ask it to the group. Yeah, so there was this girl who just put her hand up and she said, oh, it's so sad. I thought the girl and the demon would become friends by the end of the story. And that really set me thinking, Nupur, And then I spoke to my sons and we thought about it and we said, what could we do? What could we do? So we changed the power of the demon. His power was not that he could, when he put his hand on anybody's head, they will turn to ashes. His power was if he put his hand on anybody's head, they would start laughing uncontrollably and unstoppably. Okay? And they would become very tired and the demon would take and eat them. That was his power. And we changed it to that. And with that, what we did is the girl tricked the demon. He put his own hand on his head and he started laughing uncontrollably, unstoppably. And finally, when he was too tired and he was wondering what is the girl going to do to him, she asked him, why do you eat us? And he said, because I feel so hungry. And she said, okay, then we will give you food. Our village will feed you. Don't eat us. And so the demon and the girl became friends. The demon had a good feast with all the people of the village. Yeah, this
Right.
came about because we were so lucky to hear that child,
Right.
to hear perspective, which was an empathetic ending. She was not
Yeah.
looking, okay, yeah, let's just solve the problem somehow, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So this is one example. I want to give one more example, which is a story which a lot of us would have heard, which is the story of the boiled seeds, of how a king wanted to find the next heir to the throne. And the king held a competition where seeds were given to everybody. And for 1 year, they had to take care, grow the plant, and bring it back after 1 year. And everybody brought back, their plants, their beautiful plants. And one person was very ashamed to bring back an empty pot. I'm just telling you the plot quickly, because I'm not performing it. Just telling you. So the king looked at one person with the empty pot and said, "This is the person who's going to become the next ruler," right? Why? Because actually everybody had been given boiled seeds, and it was only this person who had stayed true and honest and not worried about, oh, I have to show whatever, right? So this story shared in my camp last year for children. It's a camp in which we were working on ourselves, with children, with stories, with yoga, with creative journaling, and a lot of discussions. So what I did, Nopur, was tell the story, and I asked the children, so what do you think? They said, man, that girl was honest. Honesty is the best policy. And I think, yeah, honesty is the best policy, So to tell you all honestly, I find it very difficult to be honest. And there are situations in which I'm not honest. I end up telling lies or I end up hiding the truth. And I asked, do you think you have such situations in your life? Is it always easy to be honest? And then one girl said, ma'am, once my cousin broke a vase and her mother came running into the room. She ran away and she said, don't tell my mother. So when my aunt came inside, I didn't tell her that my cousin broke the vase. So she was dishonest, but she was doing it to save her cousin. Okay. Then another said, ma'am, my best friends, both of them came and said, whom do you like more? Ma'am, I can't tell the truth. No, I said both of you. Yeah, so many such stories came up. And one boy told about how, he had two friends, and I think one of them stole something from the other without intending. And this boy was told about it, so he had to keep a secret. And he found it very difficult because, what one friend was doing was wrong. He had stolen and he had not told. He said, ma'am, for a few days I didn't tell the truth. And then I felt very guilty. And I finally went and told my other friend. We had a big fight, all three of us, but finally it got clarified. And I'm so glad I came out with the truth. So
Yeah.
we really had were discussions on, why do we lie? Okay. When does it become valid to hide the truth? Like if a stranger asks you as a child, asks you for your address or your phone number, honesty is not the best policy.
True.
Right? If your grandmother and grandfather ask, whom do you like more? Honesty is not the best policy. Right? So we spoke about when do we have to be honest? Why do we have to be honest? And in situations that truly demand our honesty, we have to be be honest with ourselves, right? Finally, what gives us the strength? We spoke about what are the things from within you that give you strength. What are the things from around you? Like sometimes, you know that your mother's going to scold you, your father's going to scold you, they'll beat you up, so you don't tell the truth. But if you know that yes, they will be angry, but they're still there with you, that will give you courage to speak up. So, this is what I mean by empathetic listening, Nupur, where we are not announcing. I tell a story and I say, okay, so moral of the story is honesty is the best policy, right? If I'm going to say that, then I'm certainly having children who can tell moral stories. But are we having children who can critically think about ethics, about values, about what does integrity mean?
Right.
In a life situation? Isn't that far away from the child? And even the NCERT director, teacher and the child, he writes that please do not give the moral of the story at the end of the story. And the interest, when you are giving the moral, you are limiting the possibility of the story to just that class. So what does the story make you feel? What does it make you think? There are 40, 50, as many possibilities, right? And perspectives, not right or wrong, as much as about, what, let's have conversations about these things.
Right.
Let's start speaking about these things, and then from there, arriving at understanding, right? So wait, pause in the class. It's okay if for 1 minute nobody is speaking. It's okay. We don't have. So there can be silence. We can wait for a shy child to slowly share what she feels. We can also, talking about listening, don't just listen with the ears, is what I tell myself. Deepa, listen with your eyes. Sometimes you see somebody wants to speak and they are not, they're waiting for your reassurance. So listen with your eyes, listen with your smile, listen with your body. If you can just look in that direction and show that, you're there, you're waiting. So in all ways, if we can listen with an open mind and ask open-ended questions, then we inviting, what is really empathy? Empathy is, coming back to the idea that a stranger is someone whose story you do not know. Yeah, and empathy is being able to imagine and put yourself in that stranger's story. Right? If I, as a teacher, tell a story, how will I know what is resonating for each child with the same story if I'm not there for them?
Right. Very interesting. I think we were all brought up with these moral stories where, it was like the moral of the story is, and we had moral science, we had books, we had everything. And this is a great approach to help children develop their own concepts and ethics, and which I think, like you said, it builds resilience, it builds their confidence, builds their critical thinking. And speaking of resilience, we are in a very, very difficult time right now with the pandemic and all the classes going online, teachers struggling to, keep the children's attention. Kids are shutting their videos off and probably snoozing away. We don't know what they're doing behind the cameras, So tell us, did you find that the art of storytelling helped teach better during these times, or did it help in any other way during the pandemic? Because we all relied a lot on the arts during this time, whether it is, watching something on TV or trying to. Teachers really struggled, is what I've learned is, to keep their attention, because it's very different from a physical class where you're seeing all the children at once. So tell us how storytelling worked for the world during the pandemic.
Right. Teachers are having a tremendous challenge. I totally agree. It's a different scenario. Equally, the children are having, a very different scenario to deal with. And, as I would always tell that I know that my children and many children go to school for friends, tiffin dabba, and academics. That's the order, okay? And I think fourth. The third will be the playground and playtime.
Yes.
sports.
Sports class, yes.
Right? Yeah, so all that is gone, huh? The friends is gone, the chit chat, the tiffin dabba is gone, the playground sports time is gone, and only the academics remains. So, I mean, what a dramatic scenario it is for them. And because of that, the fallback, the hitback is on the teacher, because she's also used to the children having that friends time, the tiffin dabba time, the playground time, and then the academics. But now it's everybody comes online, it's academics time over, right?
Hmm.
So it's certainly very challenging, and plus all this happening behind, it's stressful for everybody. But we have certainly seen that stories, music can just like that, flip things. And in the recent program that I just completed, January to March, I did a 3-month training for teachers called the Flowering Tree, where the focus was early childhood educators. I worked with a batch of 15 teachers. And given the current situation, Nupur, I particularly pushed for short stories. So apart from enjoying their story and telling a 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute story, they were constantly pushed into tell me a 3-minute story, tell me a 2-minute story, tell me a 1-minute story. So initially it was a big struggle for them, but they got the hang of it because they were challenged so many times. And that is something that I constantly receive feedback from all of them, that this is really helping me, because there's this whole class, and here I have this, okay, I have a story for you. It's over in 2 minutes. It's a nice, fun, engaging story, and it doesn't eat into your curriculum and syllabus time, because it's
Right.
just minutes, and it's something that children look forward to. And like you said about your maths teacher, it's something you can use as a tool, where you say, you know what, if you're all going to be with me through this lesson, then at the end, story time, okay? Or right,
Yeah.
you can buy favors in a way. No, I'm not saying manipulate the children. Not at all. Yeah, but yeah, if you hear what I mean, right? It's very helpful, because it's an instant stress buster for everyone, for the teacher, for the children, and everyone's like glued like that when they're listening to the story. And a story, again, I love this perspective of Dr. Brian Strum, where he says that between the story and the storyteller and the audience, there is a web of trust
Hmm.
that's created, right? So when you tell a story, you are basically taking the audience with you on an emotional journey, and you're bringing them back. So we have traveled, we all traveled to, you and I and our audience, we traveled to Rajasthan. We traveled to that village where that girl and her father are, and we came back safe, right? So what do you feel, when you go with a set of people on a travel and you all come back together? There's a certain bond, there's a,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's what is happening when together everybody listens to a story. The teacher and the students are all, they're all connected together in that web of the story, right?
Right.
So it's such a simple tool. It's such a beautiful tool, and especially if you can bring in a little music. You don't have to be a singer. No, I'm not saying that. Just a little, a little tune, a little la 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 la, la, something. Just brightens up everybody's mood, because that's talk, 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 talk. I would really say go for it. Work with small stories, and 2 tips for that: to tell to shorten stories. One, tell it out into your phone. Just voice record. Nobody has to hear it. Only you hear it is enough.
Mhm.
Tell out the story, and then when you hear it again, you will know what all you can cut out.
Hmm.
What is the bare thread? What's the basic skeleton of the story? Just one. Second, another very helpful thing is actually keep a timer in front of you when you are narrating. Actually keep a timer in front of you. Your mind automatically starts adjusting your story to finish in the given time. So these will be 2 tips that I would give, to try and tell really short stories, and use them, either in the
Right.
start, or okay, if we have done this, then you'll get a story in the end. Yeah, whatever works for you.
Interesting. I think if teachers are watching this, something you can try, because I'm sure you all have your constraints with time. Like 40
You're
minutes,
all doing a very good job.
you're doing a wonderful job. I think you guys, I mean, the pandemic, hats off to teachers, I think. And speaking of, we're talking again of implementing arts, we're talking about implementing stories and all these different tools into our teaching methods, and there have been a lot of people, I mean, I cannot obviously take names, but there are a lot of these small courses and short courses and small little firms that are coming up and claiming to use arts as part of curriculum or as part of teaching. What are your thoughts on that? How do you know who is authentic, for a lack of a better word, who is doing it more authentically and who is just trying to stay in tune with the trends?
I honestly wouldn't be able to comment on anyone else or anything else that anybody is doing. But coming back to what I spoke of as what I have seen working for me in my context and in my learnings, it has been that if you are working with stories, especially, STEAM we talk about now, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, right? If those are spaces you're exploring, then please be very clear that you have a solid grasp and understanding of the concept that you are choosing to express through a story, right? Um, uh, and then see what art form might work with this concept. I mean, there are many art forms. As a dancer, I've also attended workshops on dance and education, where we learned how to tell a recipe through dance. So there are many options, but just at the truth of it, these are my learnings. Be sure of the intent, and just like science is very clear in its communication, scientific language should also be very clear. It can become beautiful. So a story or an artwork or music or dance can add the beauty, but it must not be at the cost of taking away the actual concept, or diminishing it in any way whatsoever.
Right.
If it's happening, then don't use it.
Correct.
I'm trying to give an example, but that's nothing. I would give, the other example. For example, there's a story that I tell about the banana. Okay, how a banana was with its friends and suddenly it got pulled out somewhere and it was made naked and it went into this cave, and the cave had a big pink tongue and it had 32 white stones on its sides, and the banana was getting crushed and crushed and crushed, and it was pulled down a tunnel and it went down, down. You could go on describing. It's the digestive system. You continue to describe that, and children love it because it ends with the banana becoming potty. But yeah, so when I do a story like this, I wouldn't want to just, children like potty and poo and it's so much fun, let's just say something, right? So let's just be aware of, does it really fit in? Does it really fit into that context? Does it make sense to use this story and this framework for this concept? If it doesn't, then don't,
Right.
Don't let the wrong things get highlighted. Talking of poo, there's a book called the Poop Book. Poop Book, which is written, I think the illustrations are by Srividya Venkateshan. It was right here somewhere. I just done it for children a few days ago. Okay, I can't find it now. So the Poop Book by Kalpavriksha Publication, anybody wants to look up, they're based out of Pune. It's one of the best books on, which marries science and arts and literature in such a beautiful way. It's a simple book for young children, and it takes you through all kinds of animal excreta, if I have to be technical. Yet it does it in such a fun way. And at every point you can make out as you read the book that there's authentic information. This is proper biology. These are clear, definitions and explanations. It's not like there's anything just randomly made up, or there is which is wishy-washy. It's not like poetry.
Right.
Yes. So I think these are what we have to take care. And yes, you can use a story to even just trigger the interest. For example, if you want to talk about radioactivity, Yeah, and you know that uranium-232, blah, 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 is quite boring for children to listen. You could tell the story of Mary Curie. She was so inspiring. She's the only person who's got the Nobel Prize in two completely different fields, physics and chemistry. And she was a woman, and in a time when women were not allowed to study, she was a scientist. Yeah, and she was a widow. She had two daughters. Even in her personal life, right? There could be so many elements that would inspire an audience.
Right.
You could just talk about Marie Curie's life and then say, okay, today we're doing something that's related to what Marie Curie had worked on, and that's uranium-232. So in a sense, there's no connection. You're not making a story out of radioactivity, but you're bringing some interest in the subject. So it could be even like that, but
Right.
be clear on why you're bringing, what you're bringing, what form of art.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing is allow for expression also through art. Somebody will be able to articulate, so draw, they could write a poem to express their understanding.
Right. Very,
Oh,
very
I think we're
interesting.
really long with time.
That brings me to my last question. Last two, actually.
All
So,
right,
at Hoopsters,
you'll have to give me a minute. There's
sure,
a door. Yeah.
sure. Oh, that was a quick interruption by my little puppy. So, for those of you who are watching with us today and who have been nice enough to stay all through our talk, I just like to introduce you to what Hoopsters is. We have tons of competitions and contests which happen on our website for children, parents, and teachers. Please take a look. Log on to www.hoopsters.in, register, and we also have a very interesting story writing section where you can write your own stories, take some points from today's talk, and maybe an original story or a story of your own that you want to, spruce up and write for us. So do check it out, www.hoopsters.in. So quick advertisement. So I'll just, we've introduced stories and poems as a contest for our children on Hoopsters, for them to encourage them to write stories, to probably narrate them. So just telling them that if you have any kids who are interested, please encourage them to, enjoy this art form. So my next question to you is, you said in the beginning that your thoughts align with that of Hoopsters.
Yeah.
Right? Where did you find that alignment between Hoopsters and what you're doing? What are your thoughts on Hoopsters?
The exploration that I find, where you're looking to, as I mentioned earlier, right, on the spaces where education and art is not just doing, but trying to understand and then do.
Right.
That interests me personally, and I do get the sense that that's what's happening here.
Right. All right. My last question to you is, the topic of today's discussion is there's a story behind everything. What are your thoughts on that?
Both. There isn't, because stories are what we create to be able to make meaning of anything. And stories can serve us both purposes. When we make a story, so effectively we are making the story behind anything. So in one sense, the story doesn't exist. There is no story behind anything.
Right.
At one level, which is good to know, which is good to remind ourselves, because that means we are the ones who are the creators. So if there's a story behind anything, and if it's serving your purpose, then go ahead. If there's a story behind something and it's not serving the purpose, whether it's professional or personal, then it's totally worth re-looking at that story and reframing that story. And yes, there will be a story we've created behind it, but let's really create ones that work for us, work for those around us, and that are kind to us, that are kind to those around us.
Thank you so much, Deepa. Thank you for giving us your time and a little extra as well. And thank you so much for joining us, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed our talk. We will be sharing this on our YouTube channel, which is HoopX TV. Please do check it out, subscribe. There are a lot of other videos that you can enjoy on mental health, on education, on careers, on animal welfare. There's a ton of stuff that we're doing. Please check it out, leave your comments, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you, Deepa, and have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yes, please do check out my channel also. That's Deepa Kiran. If anyone's interested in looking up anything more on stories and storytelling and its role in education, you'll find me Deepa Kiran on Facebook, Insta, YouTube, other spaces. And I'm also going to check out Hoopsters. Yes.
And I will check out your page for sure.
Yes, lovely, Nupur. Lovely,
Talking to you.
really nice conversation.
Yes, thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much again.